الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So tonight inshallah ta'ala we'll be continuing discussing the book Mukhtasar Al-Bukhari that is titled Tajreed Al-Sarih Lil-Zabidi Rahimahullah ta'ala, and we'll be continuing in discussing where we had started last week, a new chapter where we start discussing, as the author he mentioned, Kitab Mawaqit As-Salah. So discussing matters pertaining to Mawaqit, the timing of Salat, and also Fadluha, and also the virtue of Salat. So inshallah ta'ala we'll pick up from that discussion from where we had stopped in the last lesson. So I think we have covered what there was two hadith mentioned in that.
One, just
one?
the first one. Yeah, because
Okay,
the second
so
one's long.
was it one hadith we have covered?
Yeah, one.
Okay, so Salat al-Kaffara, we haven't done that one.
No.
Okay, طيب. All right. So read the hadith and then we'll discuss the hadith.
طيب. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال المؤلف رحمه الله. Chapter 2, As-Salah, the prayer, is expiation of sins. Hadith number 326, narrated by Hudayfa radiallahu anhu. Once we were sitting with Omar radiallahu anhu, and he said, "Who amongst you remembers the statement of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam about the al-fitna, trials and afflictions?" I said, "I know it as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam had said it." Omar said, "No doubt you are bold." I said, "The fitna, the al-fitna, the trials and afflictions caused by a man, by his wife, money, children, and neighbor, is expiated by his salah, his the sawm, charity, and by enjoining al-ma'ruf, Islamic monotheism, and all that Allah has ordained, and forbidden al-munkar, disbelief, polytheism, and all that Allah has forbidden." Omar said, "I did not mean that, but I asked about that al-fitna, trial or affliction, which will spread like the waves of the sea." I, Hudayfa, said, "O leader of the faithful believers, you need not be afraid of it, as there is a closed door between you and it." Omar asked, "Will the door be broken or opened?" I replied, "It will be broken." Omar said, "Then it will never be closed again." I was asked whether Omar knew that door. I replied that he knew it as one knows that there will be the night before tomorrow morning. I have narrated a hadith that was free from any misstatement. This is from the sub-narrator now. The sub-narrator added that they deputed Masruq to ask Hudayfa about the door, and Hudayfa said the door was Umar himself.
Youngsters, you have to be quiet. It's now time for you to be quiet. Youngsters, you need to be quiet. For everything, there's a time and a place. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam rasulillah wa ba'd. So the author I've mentioned concerning that this chapter heading As-Salat Kaffara, As-Salat Al-Kaffara, so to discuss concerning matter relating to things that As-Salat it expiates. So Al-Kaffara intends acts that a person does that is incorrect, but then there's things that can expiate that act, things that can wipe away the sin of that act. Then the author he mentioned here the hadith of Hudayfa, where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned kunna julusan in the Umar. So he mentioned that we were sitting with Umar ibn Khattab. Then kind of somewhat they start to, in that majlis, in that sitting, that they start to discuss certain matters. Then Umar, they mentioned here that ayyukum yahfal qawl Rasulullah alayhi salam fi fitna. Then Umar, he kind of somewhat put to those that were present that who amongst you that you can recall or mention to us any matters from the Prophet ﷺ regarding al-fitna. So it shows that the Sahaba that when they would sit, they would constantly discuss hadith and remind themselves of hadith. So as a way of reminding himself the Prophet of hadith of things that each may be aware of, so as to educate and to inform others. So they mentioned, so the ulama after a while, they kind of somewhat discuss or kind of somewhat continue this type of practice regarding bab mudhakira. So the ulama of hadith that they will have regarding what they have these majalis, these type of sitting that we refer to as majalis al-mudhakira, where they can somewhat remind each other of hadith, so a form of reviewing the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that ulama of hadith, they will have these type of gathering. So it mentioned that, so it's also showed regarding the Sahaba, that when they would sit, that they'll try to benefit from each other. And the way to benefit is that mention something, either discuss an ayah from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or to mention a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and then that would be kind of somewhat to set the mood of the majlis. So when they would sit, is to benefit, and of those benefit, to remind each other of Islam. So you mentioned regarding concerning ayyukum yahfad qawl Rasulullah ﷺ fil fitna. So regarding that, he asks also in a specific matter regarding who from amongst you can recall any matter regarding al-fitna. So the ulama mentioned that if one was to the word al-fitna, that al-fitna, it means al-imtihan. So al-fitna, it means al-imtihan wal-ikhtibar. So al-fitna means al-imtihan wal-ikhtibar. So a person being a test or to be examined, that this is al-fitna. But then the word al-fitna, in by way of within the Sharia, that can carry different meaning. So it have a different meaning. So meaning that al-fitna, it may relate to matter regarding things related to ashar. So the word fitna, that when it is used more popular, it relates to matter of shar, things of evil. So he mentioned regarding concerning or times where a thing is somewhat there's somewhat type of that are troubles that are occurring. So he mentioned regarding concerning that who can recall anything regarding al-fitna, as to what will occur and what eventually that the Muslim will face. What eventually the Muslim will face of the different things changing. So Omar wants to know, concerned to know, what has been mentioned by the Prophet of Islam regarding matters that will change at some point. Then he mentioned قلت أنا. So Hudayfa mentioned قلت أنا. So it shows regarding that a person who may have knowledge of something, that a person can somewhat that the person can acknowledge that they are aware of things and wish to speak about that matter. So it kind of somewhat, as I said, not so he spoke up, came forward, Yani Hudayfa, to inform those that were present of what he recalled about, from the Prophet ﷺ regarding this particular topic. And also from the question that Omar wanted to know on a specific topic. So regarding concern, so he didn't ask concerns, not mention anything about the Prophet ﷺ, mention fil fitna. So matters regarding al-fitna. So you might find that at times, that you might find that things that are discussed regarding Islam, that at times maybe, as I said today, topic-led. So the person just want to discuss a particular specific topic. So he asked regarding concerning this discussion regarding who recall anything regarding al-fitna, regarding the circumstance and situation of the Muslim changing. فقال أنا كما قال له, then it mentioned فقال إن عليك عليه وعليها, then he mentioned concerning the matter قلت يعني حذيفة. Now we're going to mention what he recalls regarding al-fitna. فقال فتنة الرجل في أهلي ومالي وولدي وجاري يكفرها الصلاة. So of those things that he mentioned was Sawm, was Sadaqah, wal Amr, wal Nahi. So he mentioned those things as what he thought was what Omar intend or asked about. So he mentioned regarding concerns as for the fitna, that he mentioned that regarding concerns the kultu, al-fitna al-rajul is the fitna regarding the man with his family, towards his family, his wealth, his children, his neighbor. Then he mentioned yukaffiraha as-salat was-sawm was-sadaqah wa-amr wa-nahi. So he mentioned regarding concern of those fitna that will occur. He mentioned one regarding a man within his family, and he mentioned regarding concern the man and his family regarding concerns. No, in this case concerning ahli, meaning his wife. Because he mentioned after then wamal wa walad. So show that concern al-fitna to rajul fi ahli, and with his family, meaning his wife. Because after he mentioned children separate, so he mentioned ahl, as you find that sometimes the Arabs in their language that they don't like to mention about the person's wife, they'll refer to the wife as your ahl. Not per se, is this your wife? What's your wife's name? How is your wife doing? They're not, they like, so they use the word ahl, intending by this, your wife. So they mentioned regarding the ulama, as mentioned here, regarding concerning that, Ibn Malakin, alayhi rahmatullahi ta'ala, that he mentioned regarding, we mentioned that fitna can have different meanings. Then it mentioned regarding concerning, after the man mentioned that al-fitnatu rajul, regarding concerning is ahl, that he mentioned that what is meant regarding the person, that the husband, that, and also he mentioned that, that this also can apply to the wife. So he mentioned that al-fitna, but he mentioned that, that in most cases, the husband towards his wife, and because he carry certain responsibility, so he's the one that is more intended, but also this can also, that intends also the wife. In a sense, I'm concerned the person and his responsibility. So I mentioned regarding concern that we mentioned concerning that al-fitnatu ar-rajul fi ahli, regarding his duty and obligation towards his family. Is he fulfilling them as he should? Is he falling short in his responsibility? So those hukuk, those rights that his wife, his wealth, his children, his neighbor has upon him. Is that person fulfilling, carrying out those rights as they should, in a manner that they should, and not falling short in this matter? So they mentioned that the fitna of a rajul between his family, where he's not treating his family in the manner that he should, regarding maintenance, regarding his conduct and behavior towards his family by way of his speech and his action. That could be his fitna, by him falling short in those areas, in fulfilling those rights. And likewise, the wife towards the husband, that if she's not also carrying out her duties towards her husband, towards her husband, then also she become accountable. So that the fitna, they mentioned that, is regarding accountability, and we said today, self-reflection. Am I doing what I should towards my family in a manner that is expected from me? Also, وَفِي مَالِي. And also they mentioned that they mentioned regarding fitna rajul fi ahli, that also the person doesn't get too caught up where he said love blind him regarding certain things that certain things that should be in place. So the person becomes that he have love towards his wife to an extent that he becomes somewhat very complacent regarding certain things. With me? So that's concerned what I mentioned, وَمَالِهِ, regarding that in the fitna of his wealth, where the person has become too involved in trying to acquire wealth and become too busy with acquiring of wealth, so he start to lose sight regarding his obligation and duties. And of that regarding, so the person, and also they mentioned acquiring wealth through means which is haram and which is not halal. So the fitna of the wealth is also the person becoming too much caught up, too much focus in trying to gather that wealth, to make that money. And also of the fitna of the wealth, that the person also that is not given his wealth its right, which is as zakat was sadaqah. Not giving his wealth its rights by the person giving as zakat was sadaqah. So the person become too caught up with his wealth. And also by means of gain of his wealth, also he is not mindful of this. So take off his wealth from anywhere that it comes, halal and haram. Then that's the person, that's the fitna of wealth, the fitna of his wealth. And also, so they mentioned waladi, and also regarding his walad, regarding his children, where the person can somewhat fall short in fulfilling his duty towards his children, as the father, as the parent, as the mother, not fulfilling their duties. So of those duties towards the child, of the fitna, that the parents not cultivating that child properly, regarding that ensure the child is educated properly, or have the base of the tools that there are some that consider to be that they're educated, can read and write and get a reasonable education. So that's the rights of the fitna, not giving them this right of an education to a degree. Also of the fitna mentioned regarding al-walad, that also this the child become, always use the word, become so, the parent becomes so much they become negligent regarding certain things being instilled in their child, of the child being, as I said, no, have proper manners, the child is somewhat disciplined. So if those things, the parents fall short in those things, then that's the parent concern that become a fitna. We're not per se cultivating that child as they should. Teach them proper discipline, teach them manners, and the likes. And we see this today. Fallah mustaan wa alayhi tuqlan. And as we said, from where we are from, that they have a statement, and you said, and sometimes that oh, you behave ayad, or you behave abroad. That's everybody might have that statement, but it's real. So I'm saying sometimes we said, and that one said also it was that the discipline of the child, the tarbiyah, the cultivation of the child, it starts in the home. It's not in the school. It's not the school. It's us, the parents, to ensure that your child is disciplined. And certain things are instilled in your child. So those things, it start with the parents. I was said that tells, as I said, that your child and you become a reflection of each other. Your child and you become, and we're not talking child who reach, we said that they've said that over 15, 16 become like they're on their own now. They're kind of somewhat start to have their own ways about them. But the younger ones, especially, that they're a reflection of you, the parent, and you, the parent, is a reflection of them. So a person say a child who's disciplined, what you say? That parent's mashallah, muntaz. But if you see a child who's not disciplined, you're going to cuss the parents. You're going to blame the parents. So I said, no, this is something that, I said, that we see this all the time. The same child who misbehave in the home, will misbehave in the school, misbehave in the masjid, misbehave in the surgery office, misbehave in the bus, misbehave in the street, that's that child. That's that child. Because there's something that was not instilled and not there. So I said, I mentioned regarding concern that the hadith it mentioned, al-fitna, al-rajul. I said rajul also, that I mentioned that in most cases, how do you mention that, but also it applies to al-mar'ah, to the mother. So it's a sheer duty and responsibility. So it mentioned that wawaladi, then also wajari, then also his neighbor, that a person falls short regarding fulfilling his rights towards his neighbor. Then it mentioned, so when the ulama they mentioned regarding when the hadith he mentioned that fitnatu rajul fi ahli, fi mali, wa fi walad, wa jari, in a sense of that this things going, things not operating as it should, and then becomes something which is blameworthy. Fitna in the sense of evil now of setting. Evil of now setting. Things are going wrong, where these things they are not being fulfilled in the manner that they should. Regarding one duty towards the wife also to her husband, towards with your wealth, that your children, your neighbor, things are not going in the way that it should. So it becomes a fitna. Becomes a fitna. Then it mentioned with those fitna, meaning that the person now is falling into sin because of these things. He's falling into sin from not fulfilling his duty, for carrying out his duty towards these. Then they mention yukaffiruha as-salat. So it shows that if mentioned concern yukaffiruha, it shows that the person that is with these things that are mentioned, those things regarding his wife, his family, his wealth, his children, is falling short and doing things in a sinful way. That's why he mentioned tukaffiruha as-salat was-sawm was-sadaqa wal-amr wal-nahi. So al-kaffara takfir mean that the person not doing things that these things are being expiated by him doing of these other things, because he's falling short in these things. With me? So that's our concern. That's that the person now is doing things that are sinful to a degree, where now it requires certain things now to expiate, to remove those shortcomings, which is of those things as-salah, sawm, sadaqa, wal-amr, wal-nahi. So also it shows concern that these actions that we do, that there's a broader picture to it. So salat, was sawm, was sadaqah, wal amr, wal nahi, that they have many benefit and purpose to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also the benefit that we have to go through these acts, but not just see them as a ritual act, practice, but also it serve a benefit for us. The benefit with our salat, it expiate other things. Now, it covers our shortcomings and our sins. So he mentioned as-salah, and the Prophet mentioned concerning that. So it mentioned that as-salat was sawm, was sadaqah. So every time the person fasts, every time the person performs salah, as-sadaqah. So either sadaqah, Allah is concerned as-sadaqah, either as-zakat or sadaqat al-am. Either as-sadaqah, as-zakat, or sadaqat al-am, including as-zakat and any other voluntary sadaqah. Then it mentioned, but also it showed the virtue of these acts. Something what they mentioned alif wal lam, nam, al ahd, indicate Allahu alam, that indicate concerning as-salat al-mafruḍ, al-farida, al-maktuba. Allah, so I mentioned alif wal lam, you cover as-salat, was so when the Prophet mentioned that as-salat was-salat, as-salat ila salat, wal juma ila juma. So those things are like, so indicating that are the compulsory actions. Nam. Then I mentioned wal amr wal nahi, yani amr, encouraging of good, al-amr bil ma'ruf, that by way of speech, wal nahi and al-munkar, which is also the person that forbidding of evil, that all of these things that they expiate our sins. They mentioned regarding concerning the ulama, they have Ibn Malaki mentioned that of those things regarding that as-salat was sawm, that these things relate to abdan, that these are things that relates to our body actions. Now, so the person who fulfill by way of our limbs, bodily limbs, have to carry out those two acts, as-salat was sawm. Then also one which is more visual, which is which of the two? Salah, so more visual. Nam, that you see the person pray. Nam, then also a sawm, which is more, you understand, more internal. Nam, more internal, yeah? You don't know who's fasting, really. You don't really know who's fasting, because it's more something which is not something that is visible. That, because a person might be not eating, but also he's not fasting. Nam, so they mention overall, they mention regarding of those actions that they spread regarding, spread over different things, which is as for the individual regarding that as-salat was sawm, those are things that relate to the person's body limbs. As for as-sadaqah, which is al-mal, that a person now regarding the person's wealth, that also the person given in his wealth, and also al-amr wal-nahi relates to the person's speech. The person's speech. So those things are dear to the person. His own limbs, as how they are used, also his wealth, how he use of his wealth, and also his speech as the thing that he encourage and the things that he disencourage. So show the guidance to the person that all the person's body is involved in something of good. But also show the importance of these actions. As-sawm, as-salat, was-sawm, was-sadaqah, wal-amr, wal-nahi. Then it mentioned, قال Omar, ليس هذا أريد. That's not what I'm talking about. So also it shows the person might ask a question, and the question that is asked seems clear, but the one who's responding is not answering as the question as intended. So you're giving an answer thinking that the answer is what is asked, but in reality, what is being asked is something different. So I mentioned because ليس هذا أريد. That is not what I'm intending or I want to know about. That's not what I wish to know about. Then it mentioned al-fitna. He mentioned التي تموج كما يموج البحر. So the fitna concerning that al-mawj, that things have kind of somewhat gone, things have changed. Things have somewhat changed. So they mentioned Omar that he wanted to know regarding concerning the fitna will come upon this ummah. Omar, he wanted to know regarding, or to have a discussion regarding the fitna and the changes that will come eventually upon this ummah. So that's why he wanted this hadith to be mentioned. This hadith to be mentioned. Also they mentioned Omar, he was aware of the hadith. But as a bab of tadhakkar, he wanted someone to remind him and to remind others, somewhat to highlight concerns of those things that we should pay attention to is regarding changes occurring amongst us as a Muslim and how it might impact upon us individually and us collectively. These changes that will eventually occur. That I mentioned, is not the changes of the ocean or the moon, those type of thing I mentioned. ليس عليك منها بس يا أمير المؤمنين. Then I went on to then I mentioned إن بينك وبينها لباب مغلق. Then I mentioned that this fitna that will come upon this ummah, that there's a door that is somewhat holding things from occurring. There's a barrier. And that barrier that I mentioned, so there's something that is holding things back for everything somewhat start then to fall out of place. That is a bab, muglaq. So they mentioned the bab is muglaq, that it is closed. This bab, it is closed. قال أيكسر أو يفتح. Will the bab be, qasr mentioned as will the bab somewhat be smashed open, or they mentioned be broken, or will the door somewhat it will open? So concerning al-yuksir, that things will be very severe. Whatever will come will be very severe. When that door is smashed, that means whatever comes is going to come severe. Or yuftah, that thing will be more calm, easy. Then it mentioned qal yuksar. It will be broken, smashed open. That means things are going to be somewhat very severe and intense. Then it mentioned faqal إذن لا يخلق أبدا, that then I mentioned that this door will not إذن لا يخلق أبدا, that it will not remain closed forever. Now eventually the door will be open, and the open of the door they mentioned is with the death of Omar ibn Khattab. So this also showed a virtue of Omar ibn Khattab, that he somewhat that he stand as like a protector regarding certain things coming upon this ummah. So it shows the virtue of Omar, that a person somewhat that was a protector for the ummah. So they mentioned that they understood that things will somewhat remain in place as long as Omar is alive. But upon his death, then things will somewhat start to go in a different direction. Things will change. And all the fitna, they start then to occur. فيقيل لعذيفة, then he mentioned عذيفة أكان عمر يعلم الباب, then he somewhat is put that do you think that Omar actually knew about this door, that he was the door? So sometimes show that a person may ask a question, so either somewhat to remind themselves and also to remind others that are present. So somewhat the person already knew of the topic, but also somewhat for everyone to be aware of the discussion and the topic. They want to share that information with others. فقال نعم, that he knew. So Omar knew about this matter. So كما أن دون غد الليل, just as you know that tomorrow will the layl. Then I mentioned, so that's concerning that particular hadith. So it is not generally concerned this hadith that they mentioned that from this hadith that overall that amal salihah, the person doing good deeds, righteous deeds, that this can expiate the person's sin. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned certain deeds regarding as-salat wa sawm wa sadaqa wa amr wa nahi, that these type of action, good deeds, expiate sins. The ulama discussed concerning that these good deeds, regarding that it expiates sin, which sins it expiate. Is it major or minor sins? So they have concerned the ulama, they put sins, maduna kufr, which is less, not other than kufr, into major and minor sins. Al-Masi, Kabahir wa Saghair. That you have major sins and you have minor sins. These acts that I mentioned, does it expiate major and minor sins? You have that discussion between ulama, but most of the ulama are of the view that they mention that these acts, that they expiate minor sins, not major sins. As I mentioned, concerns with major sin, the general rule that if it's a major sin, it requires a tawbah specific for that act. So the person with major sins, that requires tawbah specific for that act. Now, as for these minor sins, then these general acts that it expiate any minor sins. Any of these are minor sins that we fall into, that they will expiate those things. Bear in mind, the ulama mentioned regarding when I mentioned that قلت الفتنة رجل في مال وأهلي في أهلي ومالي وولدي وجاري, that they mentioned that these are like minor sins a person fall into regarding his duties. As for the person fall into major sin regarding these duties that he's supposed to fulfill to his wife and the wife to her husband, regarding his wealth, regarding his children, towards his neighbor, if they are major sin, then requires what? Tawbah for that particular act. It requires tawbah, specific tawbah for that specific act. Nam. So also that it shows that hadith also showed the virtue of Omar al-Khattab. It showed the virtue of Omar ibn al-Khattab as a person somewhat that stopped certain things from unleashing upon this ummah. And also it shows regarding concern when these things occur that concern as sabr, that when these fitnas start to occur, that the person must have sabr, must have patience regarding in dealing with these issues, and also al-ihtisab, and also the person seek the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the person who's married, when you have children, when you have wealth, when you have neighbors, then you have to have you have to exercise a degree of patience. You have to exercise degrees of patience. As it says, no, just living life. You have to live with others. So for the wife and the husband, they have to exercise a degree of patience, وَإِحْتِسَابَ الْأَجْرِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ, and whatever little shortcomings that can be overlooked, can someone overlook them? So to keep, can maintain some type of order and peace. But both have to have sabr, or everyone have to have sabr regarding their duties, and also ihtisab al-ajr inda Allah, and seek the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that as something you have to kind of somewhat overlook, and also things that you have to be patient with. Some things you have to be patient with. So he said, no, even the Prophet ﷺ, that even his wife at times kind of somewhat had some issues. So? No. And that the Prophet ﷺ and his wife, Sahabiyat, the best amongst us. And you have Sahaba who got divorced, got married and divorced. Nam. So all about us masakin. Nam. Us masakin. You understand? So it's not, I said, no, so we have to approach life, he said, no, realistic. If the Sahaba had issues, the Prophet ﷺ at times, you understand, family matters that needs to be worked out. Not like, you understand, then ours, I'm not sure, with ours they have like, multiply. And those things go back to us ourselves, not just them. The other side is us, ourselves. Nam. So it showed that a person have to have, a sabr regarding us dealing with the trials of life, whether with our families, with our children, with our wealth, with our neighbors, with each other. We have to have sabr wa ihtisab al-ajr inda Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So and that not be a person that they're living in a bubble. Don't live like we're in a bubble. You understand? You want a wife, you're talking about, you give the description of Khadija and Aisha, and you are You're not Abu Bakr. You understand? You are not Abu Bakr. Your description is not that Abu Bakr, nor of Omar, nor of Uthman, nor Ali, but you want Khadija and Fatima. But you are not Abu Bakr and the likes. So if I can somewhat put things in its proper perspective. Nam. And also should the Prophet Islam inform of things that will occur. That of some of the fitna that will occur upon this ummah, regarding the trials that the ummah will face. And also we mentioned, it showed the virtue of Omar al-Khattab, regarding his place and status in Islam and amongst the Muslim. And also showed the virtue of Hudayfa, that a person can somewhat know certain little intricate matter regarding al-fitna, and other matters. So you have certain Sahaba, they knew certain topics very well. Hudayfa ibn Yaman, that of those that knew certain things about the munafiq, certain topics very well. So showing that, something a person might concentrate on, might understand certain things better. So that's concerning that particular hadith. So as I mentioned regarding this hadith also applies to, as I mentioned, al-fitnatu rajul, but also they mentioned that this hadith also applies to a woman. So the hadith, as I mentioned regarding the ahkam of Islam, that what applies to a man applies to a woman unless there's evidence to say otherwise. As the Prophet mentioned concerning the hadith, he mentioned Hunna shaqa'iq ar-rijal, that they are like the twins half of men. So whatever applies to the general meaning concerning the general ahkam of Islam, what applies to a man applies to a woman unless there's something to say otherwise, or something which is more specific to women. So that's so it says these things also. If a woman with her wealth, if she's just a single mom and have the children, then those responsibility is also upon her to ensure that these things are in their proper order. So the hadith also show regarding accountability, that will be accountable. But of ways to expiate those things, that we put effort regarding doing of good deeds, and hopefully that they would expiate our shortcomings.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله Hadith 327 narrated by Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. A man kissed a woman unlawfully and then went to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and informed him. So Allah revealed, English rendering being, and performed the salah at the two ends of the day and in some hours of the night. Verily, the good deeds remove the evil deeds. The man asked the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is this instruction for me only? He said, it is for all those of my followers who encounter a similar situation.
And then after, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he mentioned the second hadith of the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, that regarding concern that he mentioned, أن رجل أصاب من امرأته قبلة, that a man that he kissed a woman, that he kissed his wife. Then I mentioned فأتى النبي الإسلام فأخبره. Then he came to the Prophet Islam, kind of somewhat informed as to what happened. I mentioned regarding concern it, أن رجلا, that is man that did this act with this lady, that a discussion between the ulama as to who is this person. That you have about 5 names that are mentioned, but I mentioned the more that seems to be the more that correct one. Abu Yasar, that his name is Ka'b ibn Amr al-Ansari. So Ka'b ibn Amr al-Ansari, that this was the person who had that incident where he kissed his wife. Then he went to the Prophet ﷺ, that and then asked regarding this matter. Then I mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَأَقِيمُ الصَّلَاةِ طرف النهار وزلفا من الليل وإن الحسنات يذهبن السيئات. So I mentioned regarding concern that the ulama discussed concern that with this ayah that this person did this act. Then he went to the Prophet ﷺ. Then he was informed regarding the Prophet. Then this ayah was revealed. Then I mentioned, so it shows regarding that of this, what in the science of Quran that they call considered asbab al-nuzul. So in the science of Quran, so you have an incident that may occur with some of the Sahaba, or things may occur with certain individuals, then certain ayah may reveal regarding that situation to give some clarity on that matter. Then we said that within ilm al-Quran or ilm al-tafsir, so what is the ilm al-Quran wa ulumi, that amongst that science they have many science within matters relating to the Quran. So the Quran have many science, in the sense of how to interpret and understand the Quran properly. So the Quran itself have many science. What are some of those? Okay, Quran, explaining Quran. Aywa. We said the Quran, so you have the Quran. So you have many science revolving around this particular science that attach to the science of anyway, so amongst the science of the Quran, ilm al-Quran wa ulumi, that you have ilm al-tajweed wal-qiraat. So these are science by themselves. in ilm at-tajweed wal-qira'ah. Okay, you have many qira'at, and those qira'at sometimes different. So you have a science, though those are science by themselves, and you have many books on that topic. So you have concerned also at-tajweed wal-qira'at, that you have books just on the topic. Also concerned different qira'at, or they may change in the meaning. So you have books on that topic. So a person, for example, especially in the Quran, that they will have, should have all of this. And a talib al-ilm would have all these things as a part of his, which is the end product, the end result is trying to understand the Quran correctly. At the end, we're just trying to understand the Quran correctly. But we need things to assist us in achieving that goal. So we need everything that is available to achieve that goal. So of those things that relates to assist us, then of those things you have, as we said, tajweed wa qira'at as one set of works. So I said especially a person who specializes in Quran, tafsir, then they will need these things. So listen to a lecture of someone discussing concerning the ulum, the sciences that a person who gives tafsir is required to know. If you were to apply them to most individuals, then Allah musta'an. Allah musta'an. So, tajweed wa qiraat, that's one. Another. Asbab al-nuzul. Okay, asbab al-nuzul. So like I said, that this one is so you find that within what they call ulum al-Quran. So just like you have mustalah hadith or ulum al-hadith. So you have mustalah, but within it you have different topics. But within those topics, some of them also is a topic by itself, that have its own set of books. So you have books that are regarding nuzul al-Quran or asbab nuzul al-Quran. So a person also who is involved in the Quran, they should have these books regarding asbab al-nuzul. And there are several books on those topics. So asbab al-nuzul is also a book to understand regarding what was the circumstance that was occurring while this ayah was revealed. So you have an idea concerning why, then I would kind of somewhat put that in context regarding situation and circumstance that may be similar. Or you have a better idea as to why this occurred, why this verse was revealed. So that's one, asbab al-nuzul. Another of the science related to the Quran. You already answer. One. Now I said, in today, you find that like in university institute, they have this in as like a topic by itself. You understand? But it's that so you have a few books of past and concern Qisas al-Anbiya or Qisas al-Quran. You understand? But now it become like a topic by itself. But what the Sira?
Tafsir. Did you say Sira?
Sira or Tafsir? Sira. All that one.
Nasikh wal Mansukh.
Nasikh wal Mansukh. So Nasikh wal Mansukh also, you have books that also regarding Quran. Books or ulum al-Quran that also discuss this topic. Nasikh wal Mansukh, which is ayat that are abrogated, things that are abrogated. It more so occur more so regarding hadith, less, but you have cases regarding that they mention regarding an-nasikh wal Mansukh fil Quran. Sheikh. reading. You understand? For them to understand that book. So a person might be reading tafsir, what? Asadi. Or, but more or less, but for example, more Ibn Kathir. You have to understand those terminologies which is within Ulum al-Quran within this. So, and also concerns to the person regarding to master al-Quran as a science. I think they mentioned that Ulum al-Quran as a science, as a topic, Ulum al-Quran and what contains within it. And you have many books of that. You have Al-Suyuti, Al-Itqan, then you have Al-Zarkashi as his book, of the main books, and other books. They have a lot of contemporary on that topic. Then you have Ulum al-Quran. Also we mentioned Ahkam al-Tajweed wa Qiraat. I have those books that you concern it now, Qiraat wa Tajweed. Like in this ayah I mentioned, وَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ طُرُفَ النَّهَارِ وَزُلَفًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ. There's another Qiraat. So you have Zulafan, Zulufan. So it can be read different ways. So the person understanding this. And what is that if it's read that way, so this will become a part of that science. So you have books that when they discuss regarding concern tafsir, they'll mention these things. That is Qur'an is such and such. So the person understanding that language. So also the person regarding that's not Al-Quran to give tafsir, that the person also understand the books of tafsir, which is important. Understanding that manahij al-ulama or kutub tafsir. So I understand concerning manahij that the different approaches and methodology of the books of tafsir. So that all the books in tafsir follow what? One system. They don't follow all one system. So different, you have different manahij. So different, the main concern is that different books of tafsir might have a special focus on a particular topic or particular area. Some of the books of tafsir, they call, for example, al-kutub, they call al-kutub al-tafsir, and we said, musnada. We said?
Ummahat.
Hey there. See, we'll come back to that bit, where we're at. So you have different manahij. Even though you have different manahij regarding the person who's making tafsir or writing the tafsir or doing the tafsir, that he has a particular method that he's following or a particular thing that he might highlight more regarding his tafsir, give more emphasis. So you might find a book in tafsir that you can somewhat put a lot of emphasis regarding riwayat. Regarding consider he's mentioning things with isnad, going back to the Prophet ﷺ and also to the Salaf. Such as what? Which book will fall in that category? Ibn Kathir? Before Ibn Kathir? Tabari. So even so, Tabari, even though that thing Muslim, but it's not just thing with riwayat, also give his own opinions. He give also his own opinions, his own take. So given the aqwal of the Salaf, then he must say, no, the qawl which is I believe to be the more correct view from a different view is this one, and tell you why. So it's a book of Musnad, of riwayat, I said more riwayat, and also he gives opinion. So you have those type of books. Then you have book that only just give riwayat, no opinion. The book of Ibn Abi Hatim, that also is in print, but incomplete. So you have then also another approach, which is books of Ahkam al-Quran. So you have those books that primarily try to discuss those ayat that have ahkam that can be taken from it. And in that approach, it may vary from one alim to another as to what he sees for this ayah. Can I extract anything from it or not? So you have those books, but those books, most of those books, they revolve around madhab al-arba. So each madhab will have their book regarding ahkam al-Quran. Al-Qurtubi and others who have written Baghawi, like the line of Ibn Kathir. On the line of Ibn Kathir, riwayat wal al-rahi. Then you have those books, and then you have then you have books that more try to bring concerning the language, the balagha, concerning the balagha of the Quran. So we say balagha is what in English? What you say balagha is? The eloquence of the Quran. So that balagha, the balagha of the Quran, they try to bring out those things. So you have books like I said, but most of the books on that line are people either Ash'ari or Mu'tazili. The books on that line are more Ash'ari, Mu'tazili, that they bring out the language of the Quran. Or you have books just about I'rab of Quran. Just I'rab. So you have different approach regarding books of Al-Quran. So it's knowing the book that you are following, what's their approach. What their approach. Then we'll end verse 23. What is that? Ummahat al-Kutub tafsir. Now that becomes even discussion, between discussion, and it vary. In some of these things I was mentioning before, books that are recommended, it sometimes may varies from one alim to another, from one time to another, from what is available, from what is not available. With me? So a person might ask, what's the best tariq in studying hadith? Mustalah. A person says, this. That may be one of many paths. So studying something, a particular science is not just one, it's a one-way approach. In everything you'll find in these things, it is ijtihad. But you understand, you might have multiple methods, but trying to achieve the same thing. You understand? So you might find that multiple of a method, and that may, in a particular, for example, region, country, these books, in studying these books, are more renowned. But it doesn't mean that's not the only book. With me? So give me a topic. Fiqh. Nam, fiqh, eish fiqh. Whatever fiqh. That's in every madhahib, as a beginner, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali. For a beginner book, you'll have maybe you can find 3 books that you can use for beginners, not just one. I want to say 3, but you can find at least 3 books that they've said for them will be books for beginners. 3, yes, and the same too for every levels. Sorry? So on every level, you understand, for example, is Bulugh al-Maram. So Bulugh al-Maram is a book that Hadith al-Ahkam. But you have other books that are the same level of Bulugh al-Maram. And even sometimes book that said that but Bulugh become more what? Popular. But is it the top on that level? You might have a discussion on that matter. You with me? So for everything, so said in studying, it's not always a one way. There's only this path and you have to take it. No, that's not the case. So depending on it depending on the following. Teachers to teach that topic. So 1, the teachers available. 2, the books, the material available. In this, like in today's time, material now today, we said, we're getting material every so often. New material. So compared to 20 years ago, the material we have today have like doubled. You with me? They're like doubled. Or somewhat what we have much more available today than 20 years ago.
Of course, yeah.
A book that is now available, 20 years, it wasn't available. In books of Tafsir Quran, they're coming out, In Saheeh Bukhari, the main books now in explanation of Saheeh Bukhari, easily, I can show you easily 30 plus. Easily. 10 years ago, that was not the case. Or 20 years ago, that was not the case. So sometimes, depending concerning that, so studying, the teacher, books available. Also, it may depend on the place and time. And so place and time. So these are the things that factor regarding that there's not a one system. There's different route that can be taken regarding these studies. With that, inshallah ta'ala, and wabillahi ta'ala, tawfiq. But we're to discuss what he mentioned regarding Ummahat al-Kutub al-Tafsir. So for next week, you come back with the 10 books in Tafsir. 10 books in Tafsir. These will be the Ummahat in Tafsir. Inshallah. So 10, not 2. Not 5, 10. That's for us.